Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, students, and a very good day to all of you. I welcome you to the fourth lecture of report writing skills. So far, we have talked about the basic concept, and then we moved onwards towards the structure of a report. And while progressing, we have discussed in detail about the title page, the executive summary, the way it is supposed to be written, and also the objectives which are expected to be achieved by preparing the executive summary. Then we moved onwards towards the significance of the table of contents, known as the TOC. And lastly, we talked in detail about an introduction. The next section also is very important, but the manner in which it needs to be organized depends on another factor, and that is the nature of the report itself. On the basis of this nature, and keeping in view the nature of your audience and the objectives that this report means to achieve, we divide report into two basic categories. There is a deductive report, and we also have an inductive mode of report writing. The names would be looking quite familiar to you, as we have studied these mode of reasoning in our earlier classes as well. There are two modes of reasoning. One is the inductive reasoning, and the other is deductive reasoning. Now, if I ask you, what's the basic difference between the two? You would certainly say that in one we move from general to specific, and within the other we start from a specific thing and then come towards the general opinion. But the same thing has to be kept in mind when we talk about the mode of writing, whether it is deductive or inductive. So far we have covered the first few sections of the report till the introduction, and now we'll be moving onwards to the discussion and how to prepare this discussion, what is it about, and its significance. So let us begin. If we talk about the discussion, basically it is the section of your report which goes into the detail of all the process through which you have collected that data. I will simply explain it to you in three parts, because each part has its own significance. It's now talking about the first part. These are some of the points to understand when we talk about the discussion. In case of your discussion, these are some of the questions which you need to ask yourself to make yourself clear, and for your readers as well, that what is supposed to be required within your discussion section. Question number one would be that what exactly have you accomplished? Which means that this is the question which would make you to provide all the details of your results and findings, and what basically you expected to achieve. So this is the point that you need to answer within the discussion section. The next thing that you should ask yourself is that what problems you encountered within this survey or within this study. This is usually the case in case of writing the status report, and we shall be discussing these different types of report as well to make you understand these concepts in a better way. But this is the basic point to remember, that if you are given a task to look and to analyze the status of some factor or the subject matter, well, this is basically the question which should be answered within the discussion section of your report. That what problems you encountered within that process of the study and the report writing. And these things should be written in the discussion. The next thing, or the next question which you should ask and you should try to answer within your discussion section is that what you saw and did within your process of report writing and the analysis. So this is basically a reflection of your, once again, the results and findings, but the mode is a little different, keeping in view the nature of the report and the type of the report. So this is basically the mode of providing and drafting your discussion section when it comes to your trip report. For example, if you are assigned a task of going on a trip, of course, to carry out a survey and then provide all the relevant details in the form of a report, so that is how you're going to structure your trip report, and you need to provide the answers to these questions, especially question number 3, that what have you seen and what did you do throughout that survey and throughout that study. So it will be an ideal discussion section of a trip report. Now if we move towards the next question, which is supposed to be answered, that is that what procedure you followed. And from this question, what question arises in your mind? This question itself is developing another question, that where is this question pointing you to mention what kind of data? Basically, it wants to know the method or the overall design of your process, the procedure that you have used to collect data. You have to mention something about that portion within this question while answering this question. So this is also one fundamental factor which has to be answered and which is required to be written within this section. Now you'll be saying, we did mention this thing in the previous section as well, but that was just a very short summary of the method or the procedure that you have used. But this is the portion where I told you that there will be certain sections within your report where it will be expected from you to provide details. There will be people like me, of course, the general readers, who don't know that much about the technical knowledge, the formulas, the statistics, and they really want to know the details of the methodology used. What is that methodology? How does it work? Where is it used? What is the basic significance of that methodology? So it is for the people like me, you need to provide the details of that method. And this question asks you and seeks that information from you. It is extracting that information out of you, and it expects that you provide it in a comprehensive manner without missing any important point which may cause confusion in its absence. So when we talk about the procedure, basically we are asking for the method, that what was the methodology used, and now it is the time to mention it in detail. Now look at the next point. What you learned from the task. So if you remember, right after a method, what was the basic component coming? Method is just lying there. Its application matters. And the application of that method is going to provide you some results. Those results will become your findings once you know how to interpret those results. So that's why you need to ask yourself this question, that what have you learned from that task that was assigned to you and that you were asked to perform? And this is basically a question which has to be asked in case of a lab report. So you are getting a context as well in which you are expected to use and perform that task. And right now we are getting the context of a lab, and where it is expected that you should not only talk about the procedure, but you should also share your own experience and what you have learned from carrying out that procedure and that process. And if you are explaining all those points explicitly, lucidly, then that means that the discussion is very well written, because you are yourself clear about what you have done, what you have performed, and how it can be replicated, because you have provided all the details, something expected from you. So this is the case in case of your lab report, or talking about a question which needs to be answered while drafting your discussion section. At the end, not only just conclusion, not only just findings, but your discussion should be one way or another be connected with your recommendations. And now if you look at the question that you are supposed to answer at the end, just look at it. What options exist as feasible solutions to a problem? You need to ask that question, and you are supposed to provide the answer to that question as well when it comes to writing your discussion. And only that way it will be considered as your proposal. So I can say that I can connect this last one with some recommendations and with some solutions that we can come at the end. If the solutions are not being provided, that means that your work itself is either a failure or incomplete, which means that it requires more work and more practice. So basically these are the things to consider, and these are the questions which are required to be answered when we talk about writing a good, very well written discussion section. Now moving towards the second part of understanding this process of preparing a discussion section. Now you not only just have to ask those questions, but now have to consider some points from the perspective of an author. Let's suppose you are an author, and if you are preparing that discussion section, so these are the points which should be there within your mind as well when you are preparing the discussion section. It is expected within this discussion section that the author's reflection should be there with respect to the subject matter. We had a good discussion on what basically the subject matter is. We have seen multiple examples within our previous section of the introduction as well, the manner in which it is separated from the other sections of an introduction. But this is the way it is. The subject matter and your reflection, your perspective is required here when we talk about the discussion. The second point is an extension of the first point, because perspective is basically conveyed by opinions and views. So basically you have to express your opinion and views within the discussion section as well. Like this is the space. I'm not talking about the previous section. The discussion section gives you the space where you can express your opinions and views as well, so that the reader may have the point of view of the author or the person who has prepared that report. Hopefully you're following me and you have found some differences as well of this discussion section compared to the previous sections that we have studied so far. Another thing to consider here is that you should keep in mind that at the end of writing this discussion, you should clearly indicate, and your writing should also indicate, that you intend to provide a solution to the problem on which you are working. A report is always based on a problem which has to be resolved, and that is why the whole procedure is carried